Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. Let's get to this week's guest, a backpacker and videographer with a unique approach to life, Caleb Young. How's it going, Caleb?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And where are you calling in from today?
I am currently in Central Virginia, where I live for mostly all my life, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I was born in Iowa, but I was only there for 6 months. And then my folks moved out to Southern California. And from where my childhood home, I'm probably within 15 miles of where I grew up as well. I mean, it's a small circle.
Well, it's interesting because when I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than to get out of my small town. And when I graduated high school, I got out of my small town and just moved 2 counties over to another small town. So, I didn't go far from home. So, but now as I get older, I'm glad to be back in my hometown. And I couldn't imagine, living anywhere else.
It's funny how it works out that way.
It does.
Now, Caleb, we usually go by trail names on the podcast. I know you've done some backpacking, some hiking. Have you picked up a trail name along the way?
I have never picked up a trail name from another hiker. I do have a nickname that I've gathered throughout the years, not from on the trail, obviously, but just from work experience. If you like to hear that. Sure. So obviously, my name is Caleb, but I've had people call me Kellogg, just like the cereal. There's kind of I guess, semi-entertaining story behind that, but basically I was working as a young man doing construction, and I was working with a guy, and for some reason he could never pronounce my name. He called me everything but my name. He called me cable, cantaloupe, and then finally one day he just blurted it out, and I just never corrected him. And then when you're working on a job site with a bunch of guys, they just start calling you it, and it just becomes a thing. And even 20 years later, if I run into somebody who calls me that, I can usually tell either I work with them or they're friends of somebody that I used to work with.
Man, you are lucky that cantaloupe didn't stick.
He called me a few other things, but we'll leave that off to the side, until maybe after the podcast.
Fantastic. Okay, you know what? Then I'll sprinkle in some Kellogg's along the way.
There you go, man.
All right. Hey, Kellogg, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
Yeah, I've caught a couple of episodes. I follow you obviously, so I get the updates when your episodes release. But I've caught a couple of them. Gregory James, the Ethnic Explorer, I caught that one. Randall Gillespie from Grunt Proof, he's actually a friend of mine. I'm actually currently right now listening to your most recent upload, and it's interesting. Like I have a hard time turning off the episode. I'm listening to it. I'm like, I gotta go inside. I'm done running. I'll finish this tomorrow. That type of thing. So.
Yeah, and the latest episode is that the Jamil Corey Slam of the Damned. I think.
Yeah, Slam of the Damned.
A classic Doc episode.
That's actually where I actually left off right when he was explaining what the Slam of the. I can't pronounce it now, but. He was explaining how he got the name, and I was like, I got to go inside. I'm sitting in my car listening to it, and I'm like, all right, I got to go inside now. So,
well, hey, I wasn't asking just to feel good in case you listen to the podcast. I was asking to make sure that you are aware of a segment we have towards the end. You're listening to season 5 right now because that's what's finishing up, but we are actually in season 6. We've done a little bit of a revamp. As you know, we've migrated from the John Freaking Muir Pod to Hiker Trash Radio, which has been a lot of fun. It's been an interesting
I've noticed that. I was
turn of
gonna ask
events.
you about that.
Yeah.
So.
And we've also updated some of our segments. So what used to be the pro tip inside of the week, that is now the hiking hack. And so towards the end of the episode, we will turn to you and ask you to share a hiking hack, some trail wisdom with our listeners to make sure that their next outdoor experience is even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
All right.
All right. That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. I love to talk about gear, Caleb, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest's adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you've got to have it out there. And this can be any type of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. So, Kellogg, what is that item in your toolkit?
You know, I've thought about this because, like I said, I'm a big fan of the podcast, but mine would obviously have to be a blade. I'm a knife guy. If I couldn't carry the blade that I always carry out into the backcountry, I would settle for like a Mora knife, just because they're really, really good knives. They hold up well, and they just keep getting better and better over the years. They're lightweight. You can beat on them, and I've owned several of them over the years, and usually if I'm just kind of messing around the woods locally, that's something I'll carry, compared to my my bigger knife that I would normally use in the backcountry. So,
yeah, did you say, is it a Moro knife?
Mora, I think it's Mora.
Mora.
I think it's a Swedish design, and they've been out for years. It's probably one of the first knives I've ever owned, besides probably a Swiss Army knife. So.
Right. Now, is that a folding knife or is it a fixed blade?
It's a full tang knife. They come in different blade steels. They're very affordable. I mean, they're as low as, I think you can get them as low as like $20. So, I mean, they're very affordable, and they last forever.
Now, I was talking to a French guy back earlier. I think it was earlier in season 5. Thomas, I can't pronounce his last name for the life of me, but Thomas, and he was from France, and he talked about the Opinel. Have you heard about the Opinel knife?
I actually have one, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. As soon as I finished talking to him, I went on Amazon and I ordered it and got it in time for Christmas. It's a nice little addition.
Yeah, wooden handle, folds open. You kind of turn it to kind of lock the blade. Yeah,
that's exactly it. Exactly it. All right. Well, hey, let's keep talking about gear with. That's right. It's the hiking pole, and that's pole spelled P-O-L-L with 2 L's, like a survey, not like the thing you carry in your hand out there. I always like to explain that because, just pointing out how clever I am. This is a 7-question survey that is going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100.
Ooh.
with one being completely insane and 100 being completely sane.
Gotcha.
All right. You've heard this before on some of the episodes, I'm sure.
This is probably one of my favorite parts of the podcast right here.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I love the feedback. So these are all set. These 7 questions are all about hiking. They're all hiking related. And this is not a rapid fire. This is you give me your answer, and then you also give me your thought process and your reasoning behind your answer. That's going to help me factor in what your score should be. Because sometimes, even when I don't agree with your answer, the way you explain it might cause me to adjust my score.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, if I were to ask friends and family, hey, where does Caleb fall on the sanity scale? Is he closer to the crazy side or the sane side? What would they say?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, my wife definitely thinks I'm crazy. So, but I would say most people kind of say I'm in the middle. I'll take chances, but I'm not a complete moron. But I don't know, man. I'm a little crazy, probably.
I'm always on the lookout for a trail name for the episode during our conversation. Looking for some kind of turn of phrase, something funny that is said. This episode now, Caleb, it might be titled "I'm Not a Complete Moron." Caleb Young. What do you think?
We'll put that off to the side and see what we can't come up later on. It's a good one, but you never know.
That's right. It's like being stuck with the moniker of cantaloupe. You want to keep looking for something else.
See, there it is. That's what I always got all my life. It's just a cantaloupe, man.
Got it. All right. So first question. Here we go. Trekking poles or no trekking poles out there?
No trekking poles.
Oh, Really?
Yeah. And the reason behind it is, when I first got into hiking, I took other hikers' advice about the benefits of them. And I like having my hands free. And I know you can get the ones with like the rings around them where you can kind of dangle them off your wrist. But I never felt comfortable with them. I always like being able to have my hands free. I didn't like carrying something to me that it wasn't necessary. It did help at times, but to me, it didn't make a big difference, no matter what kind of terrain I was on.
Okay. And you spent some time on the AT and you have not found the need for hiking poles out there.
Not really. I mean, I've tried them, and I actually tried them for probably 2 or 3 months, I guess you could say. And I mean, they definitely have their place, but most time I just bulldogged it up the mountain, man. Pretty much. That's all I ever do is just push my way through.
Got it. The brute force method.
That's it.
Yes. All right. Question number 2. What's on your feet? Boots or trail runners?
Definitely boots. But also trail runners because I do trail running. But if you catch me on the trail just hiking, it's usually always boots.
Okay.
And the reason, and it's just really for ankle support. I've talked to other thru hikers and backpackers, and they swear by trail runners. Are like, hey, I started off with the whole boot thing, but man, trail runners are the way to go. But I'm just like, I don't know, man. I think just the ankle support is important to me. So,
and what kind of boots do you prefer? Do you have a special brand?
Not really. Right now, I have some Under Armour boots. I'm trying to think how you pronounce them. I know they're expensive, but they're lightweight. They dry pretty fast. I mean, they're more of like a more rugged boot, but I think the reason I bought them was just for the fact that they're well made, and if you get into water, they dry out pretty easily. So, and the price pretty much just lightweight. I've had some other boots where you put them on, and after a few miles, it just feels like you're dragging blocks on your feet up the mountain. So, I played around with a few shoe types, but I like Under Armour. I think it is. There's another one that starts with an S. I can't think of what the name is off the top of my head.
Solomon.
That's it. That's
okay.
it. Because I remember the first time I saw the name, I thought it said salmon or something like that. I was like, I went back and looked at it, But I've tried those. I have a few different ones, but usually I kind of go back and forth between those two boots. So.
Well, see, this is good that you gave the explanation because two of the big points for trail runners are that they're lighter on your feet and they dry out quickly if you get them wet. So you are using boots that kind of mimic that to some degree.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Question number 3. When it comes to your shelter out there, do you prefer a tent, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or hey, let's just cowboy camp?
Ooh, this is a tough one because it really depends on where I'm at, the time of year, and just a host of things. But if it's summertime, it's usually a hammock. If I'm going to a place where it's a little bit cooler, it's more likely to rain, I go with the tarp every time. Make a fire, put the tarp up using trekking poles or whatever I have around, and just kind of rough it,
Yeah. Well, it can't be trekking poles because you don't carry those.
Oh, yeah, you got me there. If I had trekking poles, I would use them. That's one of the things you find out when you get into hiking is some things you need to put up a shelter and you don't have them with you. So, but it's one of those things that when I'm out there, I never sleep well in the woods anyway. So it doesn't matter if a hammock, a tent, I never sleep more than 4 or 5 hours a night. So
yeah, I'm with you. It's tough to get comfortable and to stop your brain from doing that racing.
And I've done some long hikes in hot weather. I've been, nice and comfy, and I've never had that good night's sleep that I hear people talk about in the woods. That's just never a thing for me. So I don't know if it's just me or maybe I'm not using the right sleep system, but I've never slept very well in the woods.
Now, let's talk about the tarp. Do you do just a standard A-frame or do you have another unique pitch that you use?
Usually A-frame. I've done some lean-to stuff, just running some paracord out and just having anchors at the bottom to kind of keep it like a slope. But again, like it really all depends on the weather,
Yeah.
And like I said, if it's cold outside, you don't want to be on the ground. But it's one of those things that really all depends on where I'm at. It really
Mhm.
does, because sometimes I bring a tarp, but I also bring a hammock sometimes, just because I don't know what the weather's going to do sometimes.
Yeah, if you do carry a single pole with you, you could do the asymmetrical Holden tarp pitch, which is one of my favorites because it gives you good protection, but it still leaves the night sky easily accessible because it's nice to see those stars out there.
And another thing is, I'm a very impatient person. I don't like putting things together, especially in the middle of the night, like a tent. And I have a hammock that I can really put up in like less than 2 minutes. And like you said with the tarp, I mean, you can do it down and dirty pretty fast. So,
You know, I think we're kindred spirits because there used to be this restaurant close to my work. It was a Chinese buffet. And you know, the food was okay, but the great thing about it was I could walk in, go straight to the buffet line, grab a plate, and be sitting down and eating within like 45 seconds. So that was like high up in my priority list, you know, and not having to wait for the whole taking your order and having the food delivered process.
well, you and I would get along, because I always joke with my wife, because she'll go to Walmart and she'll always say, "I'll be back in a minute," and it's never a minute. But I'm like a member of SEAL Team 6. I go in, hit the target, and I'm out the door in less than 10 minutes.
That's
And
right.
she
Quick.
always looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, how do you? I'm like, I just go in and get out. That's it. I
That's
don't do
right.
anything else.
I call that quick strike shopping. It's a quick strike operation. You know what you want, you know what you need, you go in there, you get it, and you get out.
And you've been in the store enough, you know where something is. So I mean, unless you're looking for something else, there's no reason why you should be in there more than 10 minutes. So
Absolutely. You know, all the points I just deducted over your previous answers, I've added back in because you and I are simpatico there. Okay. Question
that's
number
good.
4. When it comes to your sleep system, are you a sleeping bag guy or a quilt guy?
Oof. I've messed with both, but I would have to say that I'm a sleeping bag guy.
Hmm.
I am. Like I said, depending on the time of year, but I found myself always going back to a sleeping bag. Um, and will it change over time? Possibly, but uh, I try to carry less gear every time I go out, just to kind of test myself and see what I can get into and like what I can stand. So, but right now I'm a sleeping bag guy. So,
Okay. Do you prefer down or synthetic with your sleeping bag?
I'm gonna say down.
And
So, I don't I don't think I've ever tried the other one. I think I've only tried like just down. So
okay. What is
yeah,
what is your sleeping bag rated to? What temperature?
I think the most one is like 30 degrees or something like that. Um, I mean, I never go like really expensive on sleeping bags at all. I always get like Walmart sleeping bags or something like
Mhm.
that. So if they're, I mean, and I've camped in the wintertime, but um, if it's super cold or something like that, I mean, it's not really going to help that much. So, and like I said, I don't sleep well in the woods anyway. So, uh, I just kind of grin and bear it if I have to stay out there more than a night. So,
All right. Now, when it comes to food out there on the trail, do you bring a stove? Are you cold soak? Or are you stoveless? This is question number 5.
uh, the cold soak thing, I don't even understand. I've heard you talk about this on the podcast. I've tried it, and I mean, eh. I'm a stove guy. And I don't think I will ever try anything else. I tried the cold soak, and it was just disgusting. So,
Yeah, cold mush. Not sure that's for us. All
yeah,
right.
it's not my thing. I can't do it.
All right. Question number 6. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Oof, man, I've heard this question before, and I'm going to tell you that I think it is above the tree line. Again, obviously, you don't want to be on top of a mountain when it's thundering and lightning, but on a nice clear night, summer night, there's nothing better than being on top of a mountain looking at the stars. So, I'm gonna say above the tree line.
Yeah, that is the correct answer, but you still lose points because it's kind of crazy. You just lose more points if you pick the other one.
Well, I'm just being honest.
That's right. All right. And then last question number 7. What's more important, pack weight or luxury items?
Oh, I don't really care about pack weight. I'm one of those people, like I've talked to backpackers, man, and they measure and weigh every ounce. And when I work out, one of the things I work out is my back, just so I can carry more weight. But again, when I go out in the woods, especially if I'm just messing around, I try to go as light as possible. I try to carry stuff I don't need, and if I do need it, I try to go without it just to kind of test myself, just see what I can get away with out there.
Got it. Okay, we have your answers. Stand by just for a second. I've got to do some math. We need to put your answers through the algorithm here. So I gotta carry the 2. We're gonna divide by pi and multiply that by √5, and we will adjust for the sway of a hammock in the woods. And I come up with a score of 47.
Oh my God. Do you have somebody check behind you just in case? I mean, I think I should be a little bit higher. Just kidding.
Well, it was a little bit of the hiking pole answer, and what else do we have here? We had a deduction on what's on your feet to some degree. You got some points back with being a stove guy, but it was just too much to overcome right there.
Fair play. I'll take it.
All right. Hey, Caleb, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up. Tell us about your background, where you grew up, what kinds of sports and hobbies you were involved in as a kid, and how did you get involved in the whole outdoor adventure cult?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town in central Virginia. And when I mean small town, I don't mean like we only have one Starbucks and, the bus system is crappy. There is no Starbucks. There is no bus system. Everything here is locally owned. It's family owned. I think you can go through the entire town in probably less than 3 minutes driving. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. Growing up, man, I grew up in that generation where your parents kicked you outside in summer days and told you to go play, and you were just hanging out in the woods, building forts, drinking water out of creeks and just running amok in the woods. Me and my brother used to go out in the woods. I mean, all the time, just building crazy forts and shelters and things like that. As I got older, I actually started playing Little League Baseball. I did that for a number of years till I was about 12 or 13 years old. And then once I got towards high school, I got a new hobby, which was I became interested in girls. So, I didn't really worry about baseball anymore. So,
priorities.
That's what I said. That's what I told my mom anyway,
Now, you said you had 3 siblings. You were the youngest of 4. Was it 1 brother and 2 sisters?
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny because I'm the youngest of my siblings. My mom had 2 girls first and then 2 boys, and then when I got married, I had 2 girls first and then 2 boys. So I kind of followed that line, and being the youngest, if you ask my brothers and sisters, they would say that I got away with murder. I remember it a little bit differently. I remember being blamed for everything. I remember, taking the blame for everything because I was smaller. But, me and my brother are only 18 months apart, so we're close in age. And I mean, like I said, when we were kids, we used to just run amok in the woods. I mean, we were hooligans. So.
Yeah. And how much older are your sisters?
My oldest sister actually passed away a few years ago. And she has some health issues. Which is kind of, we'll talk about this later on, but one of the reasons I actually got into fitness and working out. My middle sister, she is, I want to say 47.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, my brother is, I think he'll turn 42. He'll turn 42 or 43 next week. His birthday's June 4th. I know that. I always forget how old he is.
So that would make you 41?
I'll be 41 this year, yes.
Be 41 this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So not a huge spread. You guys were all within 10 years of each other.
Yeah, and growing up as a kid, my mom was a single mom, so she worked 2 jobs. My older sister pretty much raised the rest of us, and so she was kind of like a second mom. And it made us all of us grow closer together as a family, just because we grew up in that environment, and it just whatever we lacked in possessions, we had in love for each other. So.
Yeah. Did any of your siblings also catch the outdoor adventure bug?
Not really. As we got older, my brother, finished school. He got into the workforce, things like that. My sisters were never big into the outdoors to begin with. I was pretty much the only one that really kind of stayed on it. And even then, even back then, as I got older, I kind of shied away from it a little bit. And it's not because I didn't love it. It's just there was other things happening in my life that kept me off the trail. So.
Right. And do you want to give a shout out to this little town? What's the name of the little town you grew up in?
Well, the town I live in is called Buckingham County. It is, I want to say, 20 miles south of the largest town, which would be a town called Farmville, Virginia. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. That's the actual name. It's a college town. It's the closest town that has a Walmart, anything of like real civilization, and it's where you can usually find me when I'm not in the woods. So.
All right. Buckingham County. Now, is that the name of the town, or that you just lived in a small gathering of folks in a county?
This actual county is called Buckingham County, but the town that is so small. It's called Dillwin, Dillwyn.
Dillwin. That's got some character right there. Dillwin.
It's got some twang to it,
Yeah.
So, but it's a great place. Like I said, I moved out out of the area when I was out of high school, but getting married and coming back to the area, it's a great place to raise a family, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. So.
Now, this is not a political commentary whatsoever, but it's just amazing about how kids are today and how much involvement their parents have, and how much their lives are planned for them in terms of what they're doing on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And you and we were kind of turned loose with no supervision whatsoever. It's amazing to me that we survived.
I tell my kids that, and they can't fathom it. And I'm like, when I was younger, at 9 o'clock in the morning, my mom was like, "You have to go outside and do something. Do not come in here unless you are dying or you're starving to death." And I remember being a kid, and we had a neighbor that had a small garden, and we would go in his garden. We were just kids, like 10 years old, like picking tomatoes off the vine and eating them. Drinking water out of creeks and water hoses, and just, like I said, running amok through the woods. I was building forts and shelter on property that didn't even belong to my family. Nowadays, it's like kids, you got to beat them outside almost,
Just about. And I didn't grow up in a rural setting. I grew up in a suburban setting, but same thing. We would leave the house in the morning on the weekends and be out all day. This is before cell phones or pagers or anything like that. Parents would have no idea where we were. And we'd be all the way across town, just from walking or riding our bikes, doing, God knows what. And we'd come home when the streetlights came on.
And we didn't have streetlights. Our streetlight was the sun. When it dipped below the tree line, you knew to get back to the house. And usually by the time you got close to your house, you could hear your mom yelling for you. So, that was our streetlight out here in the country. So.
I love that. And that's also a new title contender. We didn't have streetlights. Caleb Young.
Yeah, that's another good one.
That kind of puts it in perspective. As kids, we measured things in different ways depending on where we grew up. I measured it by the passage of time, by when the streetlights came on. You measured it by when the sun went down over the horizon.
It's the truth. And it's, I look back on my childhood. I'm very grateful for the childhood I had, because, I had some great friends. I had some great times, and, it was just a good time to be alive.
Absolutely. All right. So Caleb, what are you doing these days to pay the bills and finance your adventures?
The full-time job is I'm a machinist. I work with metal and make things with my hands, for like just different companies and things like that. So I use CNC machining to make, different parts. It could be anything. It could be, letterings for signs. It could be just about anything. I've done probably a lot of things. Some stuff is more boring than others, but I've made signs and letterings for the military. I've made, sculpture pieces for different organizations and things like that. The side gig is obviously photography and videography. I've gotten to that the last couple of years, and I really kind of, trained on doing that by doing YouTube. So, and I've always had a passion for that type of media. It's just making videos, whether anybody watches them or not. I just enjoy making them. So.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Now, my stepfather, he was a machinist. He has his own machine shop, and when he retired, he actually moved a lot of that equipment into his garage and still did some small projects here and there for some different companies. Back in that day, it was mostly drill presses and lathes, bandsaw, but no such thing as a CNC machine back then. Tell us about what is a CNC machine?
It's basically just it's a machine that basically I mean it makes things like um I cut parts on like a laser. It just cut out of like a full sheet of like aluminum that's like 48 by 96 inches long. And we just design stuff on the computer, basically send it to the machine, hit go, and it does its thing. And then you sculpt it, clean it up, make it look presentable, and then customer likes it, they buy it. If not, they send it back and let us know what we need to work on.
Yeah.
So,
It's pretty high tech. Those days where we would try and get out of the house early in the morning. If we didn't get out of the house early enough, my stepfather would have brought home a set of products that needed to be deburred, and we had to sit in the yard and with a file and deburr these metal parts and just cut your hands to shreds.
yeah, I mean, my dad at the time, we cut grass and did things like that. We had a riding lawnmower, but we could never use it. We always used the push mower because that was strictly reserved for my dad. So, I was a small kid out there, 70 pounds pushing this lawnmower through a big open yard, and you're just like hating life. But, looking back on it now, I think it built character because, it's the hard work that I had as a kid. It definitely helps me later on in life, makes me appreciate, my upbringing. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to overgeneralize and beat on this generation right now, but a lot of kids don't have a job until they get out of college these days. I mean, not a lot of them have had to really have a job at a fast food restaurant or doing some manual labor out there. They've been pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, they've always had a job. Even my little kids, my youngest one is 7, and I mean, their jobs are like, putting away the dishes, towels for the bathroom, things like that, picking up the rooms, just general stuff they can handle. But obviously, when they get a little bit older, they're going to be cutting grass and doing things outside. And I mean, we pay them. I never got paid. They don't get a huge allowance. They get like maybe like $10 a week or something like that. But I mean, when I was a kid, we did work and never got paid. So.
Yeah, and I think a theme is probably going to emerge in the second segment of tonight's episode is that easier is not always better. I mean, there is a purpose for going through hard stuff that really it builds something in you. And so I don't know that we're doing our kids a favor by letting them skate by and just focus on studying, right? There is some benefit to doing some labor and doing some work out there.
It definitely is, and I encourage anyone who has children, especially small children. There's nothing wrong with that, asking your kid to do chores, cut grass, things they can handle. Because as you say, you don't want to beat up on today's generation, but I see a lot of sometimes entitlement, even I say laziness, and I want my kids to be good citizens. I want them to be good people and work hard for everything they have. So.
Yeah, and I know that there's probably not. I don't want to blame anybody on this. That you certainly can't blame the kids, and you certainly can't blame the parents really, because as a parent, you always want to provide a little bit more than what you got as a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to kind of pave the way. You want to make sure they have a better life than you do eventually. And so I can see the kind of the motivation behind it, but I think it's not a bad thing to step back and say, you know what, chores aren't such a bad thing, or a part-time job in high school is not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, absolutely not. I mean, I had fast food jobs when I was in high school. I worked at grocery stores, things like that, and I never wanted to be a career. And I knew, I remember my mom's. I remember getting my driver's license, and my mom said, "You can drive my car, but you're going to put gas in it." I'm not buying you a car. You're going to save up your money. You're going to buy your own car, because when it comes down to do all the things like replace tires, change the oil, all that stuff, costs money. And I remember being 16 years old, doing burnouts in my mom's 1999 Dodge Intrepid and not having a care in the world. But when it was my car, I didn't do any donuts because I knew I had to put tires on it eventually. So, it made me a little bit more responsible and made me appreciate, what I had and working hard for it. So
Funny how that works. That's
it
great.
is.
Yep. All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get back to this unique approach to life that I referenced in the intro. We're going to hear how that applies in Caleb's life and see what it's all about. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We're talking to Caleb Young, a.k.a. Kellogg, not Cantaloupe. And we heard a little bit about him growing up, heard some good stories there. Let's talk about this unique approach to life you have and that you're trying to instill in your own kids. I have here in my notes something called training for life. Tell me about that.
Oh, man. Training for life for me is like when you're passionate about something, even hiking, you dedicate your life to it. You want to be in the best shape. You want to have the skill set to get yourself out of dangerous situations. And I take full advantage of that. And what I found through hiking is, everybody knows you have to be in good shape to hike. If you're going to be a thru hiker and hike the AT or the PCT, you want to be in good shape. And when I first started going into hiking, I was doing like regular trails, mostly flat. But when I started getting into the mountains, I realized I wasn't in great shape. And I knew if I wanted to do, hiking and backpacking through hiking and getting into the backcountry, I had to be in better shape. So I made it a point to myself that if this is my craft, if this is something I'm passionate about, I need to dedicate my life to it and basically try to be the best version of myself I can be, physically, mentally, just everything that involves the outdoors.
And did you have any kind of outside inspiration in that aspect?
Oh man, I'm a book nerd, and I actually I didn't know about this guy, but I found this guy. His name is David Goggins. If you don't know who he is, he's a former Navy SEAL, and he wrote this book called "Can't Hurt Me," and it's kind of his life story. It basically tells you, how he grew up, and this guy had a bad childhood. He wasn't a smart kid. He had an abusive father. He was overweight. He had all these bad things going for him. But he decided, I don't want this life anymore. I want to do better. And he decided he wanted to become a Navy SEAL. And I want to say he's the only person to go through 3 Navy SEAL Hell Weeks, I think in like 1 year or 2 years, something like that. And he's considered probably the baddest dude alive. I mean, he's just an awesome dude. And to see that guy go from that transformation to basically an overweight, exterminator in a small town to being one of the most elite warriors that the military produces, all from just putting his mindset to what he wanted to do in life. And after reading his story, I'm like, this dude had every excuse in the world to be nothing, and he chose to be something. So what is my excuse? What can I do to make my life better?
And so how have you done that? What have you done to to level up, to get yourself ready for whatever challenge comes your way?
Like going back to the section hiking and through hiking, stuff like that, it's like I had these dreams and goals, and I made excuses for everything. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you like, I had a rough childhood, things happened in my life, big deal, get over it. But every time something came up in my way, an obstacle, I'd always make an excuse. It's too far, it's too cold, it's too high. There's something, and I basically said I had to stop putting excuses first. I needed to put in the work. If I wanted to be a section hiker, a through hiker eventually one day, then I need to put in the work. And I did that by getting in shape, losing weight, eating right, and just having the mindset that when things get tough, you keep going. You don't, bow down and, head back down the mountain. You stick it out.
Yeah. I mean, that is a topic we talk about occasionally here, is that people who are planning their next adventure and they're trying to plan it to the nth degree and they're waiting for the right time. If you're waiting for the right time, sometimes that'll never come. You have to stop making excuses and take the plunge. Don't equipment out there can be very expensive. The ultralight equipment, if you can't afford it, don't get the ultralight equipment, get something else, but don't let that prohibit you from getting out there and doing something.
I mean, absolutely. And I mean, are there going to be rainy days? Sure. Is it going to be cold? Sure. But how bad do you want it? When it gets cold, are you just going to get off the trail and go into a nice motel and wait it out? No, you just got to keep pushing forward. Take a second, evaluate what's going on, and keep moving forward. And if you do that enough times, you'll reach the end.
I mean, if you're doing everything in perfect weather and perfect conditions, I mean, where is the type 2 fun? There is no type 2 fun in those situations.
And that's the thing. I purposely go out in bad weather because it makes me appreciate the nicer days even more, because when it's 80 degrees outside and you're going for a run, that's great. But when it's 15 degrees outside and it's spitting rain, it's not so fun.
Now, were you a runner in high school?
No, I mean, I was never a runner. I think the best shape I was ever in my life was obviously in high school, because you have gym class, you have a better metabolism. And as you get older, and as you, like I said, making excuses again, things happen and life happens. And, I just kind of got to the point where, I wanted to reach my full potential. If there's something that was hard or it made me uncomfortable, I wanted to do them. I always wanted to run a marathon, but I always made an excuse why I couldn't do it. Even going to the gym, I have a gym a mile from my house, and I would make excuses about why I couldn't go. And now I'm literally running to the gym every day to work out. And it's all because I just kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be a hiker, someone in outdoors, I have to be in the best condition I can be. And I have to stop making excuses and take ownership of my life.
Did you ever get to that marathon?
No, I've done some 5Ks and things like that, but I'm not. I've never done like an ultra marathon. I'm not. I mean, like I said, I'm brave. I'm not stupid. I've studied those races. I've seen what people go through, and I'm going to get there one day. But I'm training for that part. I'm training to be one day an ultra marathon runner. I'm training to be a thru hiker on the AT. These are all goals I have, and the only way to get there is to obviously, keep moving forward and train for life, train for what I want.
Now, you don't have to do an ultra marathon. There is just the marathon you could do, 26.2. You don't have to do the 30 or the 50 miler.
Yeah, I've done 5K and 10K, and I did them because I was always interested. I mean, I watched them and I was like, it seems like a kind of cool thing. And then I got out there and it wasn't so fun. Number one, because I was running in an urban environment. I didn't like it. It was just blacktop and just city folk running around, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I've done a couple of them just to say I've done them, but I really enjoy trail running. The hills, the elements being out there, and even the camaraderie around runners. Though they see you struggling, there's always a kind word to say, like, hey, keep going, you can do it, or hey, run with me for a little bit, stuff like that. So I just enjoy trail running more than I do, like, I call it urban running. I don't even know what you want to call it, but I never really enjoyed the 5Ks in cities and stuff like that. It just never was my thing.
Now, Caleb, I have to tell you that I didn't pick up running till I was 43, and I've done 4 marathons. And there's something to be said about a marathon in that it is a big race where it's one of those things where you toe the line at the beginning and you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is going to suck at some point. This is going to be something, but you know what? I'm doing it. And also the training, the 3 or 4 months of training leading up to the marathon, I think in my mind is just as big an accomplishment, getting through the training program for a marathon than the actual, or as big as the actual marathon itself. And there's also a great atmosphere at an official marathon. I did the LA marathon 3 times, and then I did the San Diego rock and roll for my 4th. And the atmosphere and the people lining the streets and cheering you on, and the number of runners out there supporting each other, it was incredible.
And I have to agree with you 100%. The first, when I did like my first 5K, and I mean, that's like beginner type stuff. And, I wasn't even like trying to win. I was just happy that I was out there outside of my comfort zone, trying something that I had never done before. And you had runners from all ages, body types out there running. And, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not insulting, but there was a lady out there that was not a runner's body. But when she took off that line, it didn't matter if she was in the last place. She had the biggest smile on her face. And the people that, like you said, were on the side, they were cheering her on. And I don't know what she placed, but you could just tell that she wasn't out there to win. She was just out there for, like you said, the camaraderie. Just being out there was fun to her. So that made me really enjoy just getting out there, was just seeing people and just seeing the energy that people had for the sport. So
Yeah, and running can be humbling. Running a marathon can be humbling, because at mile 25, when you are struggling and you're hurting and you've got people passing you, in your mind you're thinking, I should be able to beat these people, and they're going to finish in front of me. There's no way they should finish in front of me, but they're going to, and it's just it's an endurance event.
yeah, and I mean, the ones I ran, there was always one guy at the end of the finishing line that was giving everybody high fives or saying, like, way to go, awesome job, things like that. And it kind of took the sting of either, not finishing first or third, out of it, because, you knew that guy loved what he was doing. And, for him to stick around at the finish line and give you a high five and tell you, good job, like I said, the community is amazing. It really is.
All right. Now, you talked about putting yourself in difficult situations to prepare yourself for encounters that you might find on the trail. How would you do that? How would you put yourself in difficult situations?
So, when I got into hiking, I would watch videos from, gear, things you need, but I would also watch these videos about how people got into trouble in the outdoors hiking, whether it be section hiking, through hiking. Quick story, there was actually a woman here who was hiking the AT, and I actually watched it on a TV show. She stepped off the trail to use the bathroom and got lost. She had all her gear with her and everything like that, but when she didn't check in with her husband, obviously they called search and rescue. They never found her. It was 2 years later, a hunter actually found her campsite. She had starved to death. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going out there, especially if I'm going off trail, I want to be ready. So I'm taking self-reliance classes, learning land navigation. I got certified in first aid and CPR. I wanted to prepare myself for whatever I might find out there. If I hurt myself, I want to know how to fix myself. If I'm going to navigate, I want to learn, if I don't have GPS or, something happens, I want to know, which way I got to go to get out of here. What is the incline? What's the decline? How do I use ranger bees to count my pace? Just everything. So with running and working out, and, whenever I wasn't doing a hike, I was always, taking a self-reliance class. I was studying something that would help me in the outdoors. And not only was I studying it, I was putting it into practice. I would go out there and practice navigation. I would do mock scenarios where I've broken my arm, and I'd strap up my arm and, like, try to build a shelter with one hand type of thing. I would try to, just take tops off of bottles with one hand. I mean, I would do things to where, if something was to happen, muscle memory would kick in and say, okay, this is what you have to do. Don't panic. And, you're going to be okay. So when I wasn't hiking, I was always preparing for the worst, essentially.
Right. Now, you talk about shelter building. Did you take any, like, bushcraft classes?
Yeah, I took a couple survival classes. They usually do, typically some of them are like, fall, spring, winter, things like that. And, it was, I'll be honest, like I said, growing up as a kid in the woods, it kind of came natural. It was kind of fun, some people would get real serious with it and, like, try to build the Taj Mahal. And I'm like, look, I'm not living out here in this thing. I just need to survive a night if it's cold, or, I just need a place to, hunker down while it's raining. I just need to know what type of shelter to build and where. And, I actually had a lot of fun with it. And like I said, the shelters can be anything from a lean-to something to get yourself off the ground using cordage, whether it be paracord or natural cordage. Yeah, I kind of just made it to where, when I wasn't out on the trail, I was studying for the trail, if it's, a way to put it.
Got it. Also involved in any kind of training for fire making?
Yeah, like all the classes I took, they would, teach you how to do primitive fire, with a bow drill, obviously a ferrule rod, or, fire steel, however you want to call it. I mean, we would do races where, they tie a string across your fire pit, and they would, like, say, okay, let's see who can build a fire the fastest and get the flame up to where it would, like, take out the string. And if you won, you got the instructor's praise, whatever that means. I dabbled a little bit in SEER training, just because I think one of the places I was training at offered it. I don't ever expect to be behind enemy lines or anything like that, but just learning how to get out of situations that, could, if you're, I hear stories all the time about people who are through hiking, especially women who can be assaulted, and different things like that. So I just became a student of all things, of the woods, pretty much. Anything that could help me better myself out there, I wanted to be an expert in.
Now, SEER, that's right up Randy Gillespie's alley. For our listeners who may not be familiar with the term, with the acronym SEER, what does that stand for?
Survive, evade, resist, and escape. Shout out to Randall over at Grunt Proof. If you don't know, he does have the Grunt Proof SEER Challenge over on YouTube. Be sure to check that out. It's a great series. And he kind of got me interested in that because I think I watched the original series with Eric Coleman. I don't know if you know him or not.
I do. In fact, I got this great sign hanging up to the right of me right now that he made for me just out of nowhere. Contacted me on Instagram, said, "Hey, we live near each other. I'm going to give you something." And he has this great sign that says it was the previous name of the podcast, the John freaking Muir Pod. It's on a looks like something you'd find out in the mountains. It's awesome.
Yeah, he actually made me a sign for my office, and then he made me one for my wife as an anniversary gift. It has like our last name on it that we hang outside our house. Just an awesome guy, man. Great guy. He's a friend of mine as well. And Randall, watching the SEER Challenge, it really got me interested in it. And he puts a lot of work into that out there. And he kind of teased me a little bit, like, hey, you're next to come out here. We'll see. But just let him know when I come out there, I don't go half speed. So,
well, if you don't do the SEER Challenge, you're also, it sounds like you're ready for either Survivor or Alone.
My wife teases me. She's like, if something was to happen, she's like, you would bask in the glory of surviving because, we'll make fire pits in our backyard to like do s'mores or something. And I can't go out there like a normal dude with like lighter fluid or something and start a fire. I'm out there like getting tinder together. I'm like striking the ferro rod, building the fire up. And she's just like rolling her eyes. Like, would you just get some lighter fluid or something? Like, come on, the kids are starving,
You got to start from the ground up. Primitive, go primitive.
I told her, I was like, you got to be more supportive.
And do you also dabble in the martial arts?
I do. I started taking Brazilian Jiu Jitsu probably it's coming up on 3 years now. And that was something that I always wanted to do, but again, made excuses not to do. I'm too old. It looks too difficult. There's nothing around. There's no gym around me to train at. I made up every excuse in the world. And eventually, like I said, when I got in the mindset of wanting to be a better person, reach my full potential, I stepped into my first academy, and it was awesome and painful at the same time. I loved it, and I still train.
Yeah, I think in the people that I talk to, being of the outdoors, they have a balance in their life, and I think there are a number of people that I've talked to that also have experience in one or more of the martial arts, and I think that's also part of it. You're finding this balance in your life. Mike Kucharski, big shout out to Mike, who's out in the New England area. He also practices the art of Jiu Jitsu and I'm not sure when he got into it, but he is advancing through the levels and just having a great time with it. But I think it also adds to that way of looking to find balance in your life.
I actually have a funny story about it. We can go into it later, but you're humbled by jiu-jitsu. You really are, because when you go in there, you're a white belt, you're going to get ragdolled by everybody. And, it humbles you very quickly. You will not leave out of a gym, a jiu-jitsu gym, and, dry. You will be soaking wet. You will have a big man on top of you, sweating all over you. And you're both so exhausted. You're trying to, submit each other, but it's the best time you will ever have. And it's so, I've heard people tell me like it's addictive, and I was like, it can't be that addictive. It is addictive. It really is. Because when somebody that, taps you so many times, you're like, oh God, dude, not again. I've got to do something different. And it makes you want to train harder so you can tap them. And, But as a white belt, when you go in there, don't expect to be John Wick and think you're going to just take on the world. You're not. You're going to get ragdoll a lot. You're going to get tapped a lot. You're basically just like a human test dummy for several months. But it's a great community, and learning, like you said, learning a martial art is good for you. It really is.
Now, how does someone go from doing hard things and saying, you know what, this is too hard, I'm going to give up, to, you know what, I'm going to press on through it? That's a very different mentality.
Going back to like the family thing, I mentioned my sister passed away. She had some health issues. She wasn't in the best of shape. She was a smoker. At the time I was a smoker, and I kind of got it in my mind. I was like, I don't want to die from a cigarette. I think at the time, I was heavier than I'd ever been in my life. And I just didn't feel good about myself. I got depressed. I wasn't, I just wasn't in a good state of mind. And, it wasn't until I really sat down and just had an honest conversation with myself, like, there's a way out of this, but are you willing to put in the work to make it happen? Don't do it for your wife. Don't do it for your kids. Don't do it for clout on social media. Do it because it's going to make you a better person. And once I had that conversation and I got into the mindset and saw the changes that could happen, it came, I'm not going to say it came naturally, definitely didn't come easy, but it became something that it was worthwhile. It's something that I truly love to do. And I'm going to keep doing it until I can no longer do it. I'm not getting any younger, but I'm going to keep rolling jiu-jitsu. I'm going to keep getting into the backcountry and checking stuff out as long as I can, and definitely keep doing some marathons. But it's just a mindset you have. It's a switch that flips in your brain. I think at some point in time in our lives, we all look back and go, what have I accomplished in my life? What is it? What am I doing with my life? Am I just here to exist, or do I want to do something great? Do I want to do something that my kids can be proud of? And for me, that's what it was. I wanted my kids to look back on my life and say, my dad, excuse my language, was a badass. And, I want to live up to that.
Well said. Well said. Now, let's talk a little bit about your experience in the backcountry and how you got involved with backpacking. Tell us a little bit about your time on the AT and also in the Sierras. Oh,
man. I like going from, I've done, like I said, I've hiked in the woods, recreationally, but when I first got into hiking, it was more or less like flat trails. I didn't do anything strenuous. I didn't do anything crazy. But once I got comfortable, I just started upping the game. And, a few months after really getting into hiking heavy, I got on the AT, and it's awesome. I've section hiked parts of it. I've done some shorter hikes, some longer hikes. And, and again, being in good shape and just being, fitness conscious really helped with that, because I think the first hike I did on AT was like 3 miles or something like that. And I was dying. Sweating profusely. I was just like, oh my God, man. And then I was like, how am I ever going to do a long section hike? How would I ever through hike this? And again, it all came back to, being a master of the craft. And I was like, okay, I know what I have to do. I have to get in better shape. I have to do things to, to go farther, to deal with the elements. And then once I got to the point where I was comfortable on the trail, is when I really got into doing like some long section hikes. Again, I'm not the smartest dude in the world, but I'm not an idiot either. I think my first hike on the AT was like 3 miles, and I did like 5.7. And I think my longest hike was about 20 miles. And, every time I went out there, I learned something new. Like you're talking about trekking poles. I bought trekking poles, and I was like, I don't use these as much as I think I will. Cold soaking. Tried that. That sucked. Don't do that. I learned something new every time I went out. And then once I got comfortable on the trail, I found myself going off trail, like exploring places that there were no trail, getting into the backcountry, like what's over this ridge, what's down in this valley. And and if I thought the AT was strenuous, going off trail is even more strenuous. It really is. It's the AT is thick. The brush there is thick. It just all came down to like just getting out there, man. If it's something I wanted to do, I wanted to do it the best I possibly could. That's the easiest way to put it.
And how did you end up in the Sierras? That's all the way across the country.
A couple times a year I do some traveling. I've got some friends out there, and I think I was watching a documentary about the Sierras, and it just always intrigued me. And I was like, I'm good in my environment, but how could I do in something I'm not familiar with? So, I researched the areas, I checked out local wildlife, plant life, and, there's, Yosemite out there. There's just things, I wanted to be a part of. And I finally just made the trip out there. And yeah, it was awesome. It's beautiful out there. I don't think I'd ever move, but I'm definitely going back, definitely very soon. So
Now, what part of the Sierras did you get into? Did you get into the
oh man,
Sequoia National Forest, or was it Yosemite? Or
I checked out Yosemite.
Mhm.
I've checked out, is it the Redwood Loop?
Yep.
Panorama Trail, is that what it's called?
Yes.
And then, getting off trail, I'd talk to locals and be like, what's the most area where there's not a lot of people? And it's kind of weird out there in the Sierra because a lot of the development is backed up against the mountain. Like I was told by several people, like, the development out there is getting pushed closer back towards the mountain. Like there's more people out there compared to was, I think, like 10 years ago or something. And they'd be like, well, check out this area over here. And I would go into the backcountry, either walking. I'd hitchhike and have a guy drop me off at like an old service road, and just walk up the mountain. And just getting out there, man, and just exploring and just seeing what this. I mean, it's some steep mountains out there. I'm not gonna lie. And but God, man, like every hill I crossed, it was gorgeous. I mean, just everything out there. I mean, y'all had a lot of snow this past year. Y'all have just like the it's thawing out, so a lot of the rivers and streams are kind of bulging a little bit. So I was very cautious of that because I think a farmer told me out there, he's just like, I don't know what you plan on doing out there, but he's like, when you're crossing the rivers and stuff, be careful because they're swelling. We're getting a lot of melt. And I think I came to this. I want to say it was like a small little stream, but it gotten wide. And I was thinking about crossing it, and I was just like walking down, and I was like, it's not getting any better. So I'd walk back upstream, and I finally found a spot to cross where like a log had fallen across, and I just kind of shimmied across it. But I was extra cautious while I was out there because I'd never been out there. But you guys have a lot of wildfires out there. Seeing damage from that, and just seeing it on the news is one thing, but seeing the devastation in person, it really puts it in perspective. You're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Absolutely true. And it's a lot of snow, a ton of snow. The big concern is the melt off, and what the impact on the rivers and streams and the crossings are going to be. I already know that there are a couple of bridges that are major thoroughfares for PCT hikers and John Muir Trail hikers that are not there anymore. They're going to have to be, replaced, rebuilt. And so it's going to be really interesting right around this time of year, a little bit, maybe another month or so, to see what the PCT hikers do when they get to the Sierras, because it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I went on one of the service roads I went on. I was actually going. We call them fire trails. I mean, I guess you call them service trails. I don't know what you would call them, but I actually met. There's a crew up there. They were doing something. I think they were fixing the road, and I came walking up, and the guy was looking at me like I'm crazy. I was like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" He's like, "Yeah, you need help? Are you lost?" I'm like, "No, just checking things out, bro." And I think the road had washed out or something. Like there was like a small like bridge, and it had done some damage, so they were fixing the road. I think putting in like a culvert pipe or something. And I hung around, talked to those guys for a few minutes, and just getting the information from the locals. Just asking like, hey, what's a cool spot to check out? What's something off the beaten path that locals go to, and they'd be like, hey, you need to check out this place, or go to Joshua Tree, or definitely check out Yosemite. It was just a good time, man. I went out there as a tourist, and I did the touristy stuff, but I made sure to get in the backcountry and check out the other side of the Sierra. So
nice. Hey, Caleb, have you reached your full potential yet?
I'm working on it. I got a few things to work on. Maybe a better trail name. Yeah, definitely a better trail name. I think I need to come up with something better. Maybe next time you have me on, I'll have a better one.
Okay. All right. What left do you want to accomplish? I mean, what's the next big adventure for Caleb?
The next big adventure, man, is I would like to through hike at least the state of Virginia next year. When it comes to running, I would like to enter like an official marathon. I'm not scared of it. It's just like, like I said, I know what it takes to get into shape. I know what it entails, and it's like I just want to go out there and put out the best performance I possibly can. So next few months, few weeks, I'm going to be out here just hitting it hard, just putting in the work, and hopefully later on this summer, maybe in the fall, you might get a picture or a video from me out of my first marathon. So
Fantastic. All right. Hey, Caleb, you know where we are?
where are we? Besides the best podcast in the world.
That's right. It's time for hiking hacks. This is the part of the episode where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So what kind of wisdom do you have for them, Caleb?
Oof, man. As a hiker, you get to points on the trail where, things are tough. Don't give up. Keep going. Take 30 seconds. Push forward. Give yourself 30 more seconds. Keep pushing forward. And just keep going. Eventually, you'll reach the end. Last piece of advice. I know we live in a digital world, but put the phone down. Enjoy the outdoors. Don't worry about that fire Instagram picture you want to get with your homies. Just be out there in the moment, whether it's good or bad. Just be in the moment.
That's right. Ignore that urge to quit. Always push yourself just a little bit further. If you have to go to point hiking or point to point running, where, okay, I'm going to run to that next tree, or I'm going to hike to that next tree, and then you get to that tree, and then you pick out another tree. You keep going. Do it incrementally.
That's it. When you get around this turn, take a second, look ahead, and pick another point, and just keep pushing forward, and eventually you'll get to the end.
That's right. And put the phone away. Be present. Experience the moment.
Be present.
Mm-hmm. All right. So there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Caleb, and I want to thank you for joining us this week. Kellogg, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
You can check me out on Instagram. If you like hiking and working out and just getting after it, you can check me out over there. My username is Caleb Savage. I actually just changed it because it's a really original name. I didn't have anything else to come up with, but if you want to check me out, it's Caleb Savage. I do a lot of photography, videography, working out, and just general wackiness over there. So if you like a good time, give me a follow.
Hey, we're always looking for general wackiness. That's outstanding. Hey, remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com. Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, Caleb, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be a movie, a book, a documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. What kind of recommendation do you have?
If it has to do with one of the first films I saw about getting out in the outdoors was Into the Wild with Emil Hirsch. He's a guy going, I think, from the East Coast to Alaska to really get out there in the wilderness. It was a great movie. Stars Emil Hirsch. Don't
give away the ending.
I'm not giving away the ending.
All right.
If you're an outdoors fan, you've probably seen it. It's an older movie, but that would probably be my movie of choice. But I think books, if you really want a book to motivate you, that really is going to tell you, to really get you out of your comfort zone and tell you, what, if there's something lacking in your life, here's how you fix it. Check out David Goggins' You Can't Hurt Me. That book will get you off your butt and either in the gym or on the trail.
Outstanding recommendations. And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss tonight?
Oof. I love stories. I have two stories if you want to hear them. One's a hiking story. And then I have a workout story, and then I have a trail hike almost fight story. So I'll leave it up to you which one you want to hear.
Wow. How about we pick two? Let's hear the last two. Those sound intriguing.
So you want the almost fight?
You had a workout story and an almost fight.
Okay, so I went hiking on the AT with some friends. It wasn't anything hard, and we're just out there, friends, goofing off. And we get to the top of this lookout, and my buddies are throwing balls of water on each other. And these three guys apparently got water on them. They said a few choice words. We're like, hey, sorry, no big deal. We've finished our pictures, head down the trail, no big deal. We're in the parking lot just having a laugh and something to eat. These guys come down there, and apparently they were still upset about it, so they were constantly saying things under their breath. Now the people I was with, two of them were purple belts in jiu-jitsu, and then obviously I do jiu-jitsu. And my one friend Andrew, this guy was after him hard, and he was just kind of just smiling. That was his personality, and the guy was just calling him every name in the book. And basically, I'm trying to get him out of there. I'm like, look, man, it's not worth it. Let this dude run his mouth. And I remember putting my hand on his chest, like, all right, man, let's just get out of here. And I'll never forget it. This smug kid was like, that's right. Get your boy out of here before I whip his tail or whatever he said. He said in other words. And I turned around and I was like, dude, you don't want none of this. Trust me. And, Andrew's not a big guy muscular wise, but he just kind of turned around real smug, just got in the guy's face. And he was like, you don't want none of this. And just turned around and walked away. And knowing you can jack somebody up doesn't mean you should jack somebody up. And you learn that in jiu-jitsu. And that was probably the almost fight story. And, I couldn't be more proud of him. He could have wiped the floor with that dude and made him call his mama, but he just smugly smiled in his face and walked away because he knew you don't want none of this.
Yeah, and there's some trail wisdom right there. I mean, don't poke the bear. You don't necessarily know what's in the bear's background or what kind of training the bear's had. So just take the high road.
That's what we did. We just left. The other story was a fitness story, right?
Yes.
So normally my normal routine for working out is I get up usually about 4:30 in the morning, and I run to the gym. The gym's about a little over a mile from my house. I run there, I go, I work out, and I run back home, get a shower, start my day. I went one morning, and I'm on the way back, and it's spitting rain. It's cold. It's probably about 20 degrees outside. Cars are passing, and I noticed a car's creeping up beside me, and I finally look over, and it's actually a state trooper. And he has this bewildered look on his face. He's like, hey, what's going on? Is everything all right? And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? By that time I'm walking, and he's like, everything all right? What's going on? I said, man, just out here getting a run in. He kind of looked at me. He's like, why? I said, because you're not. And he's like, all right, and just drives away. A few weeks later, I see the same cop again, but this time it's actually in the gym. And a couple of weeks go by, and we're working out. We kind of nod to each other when we see each other. But finally, I walk over and I say, hey, man, how long you had a membership? He's like, oh, I'm 2 weeks now, whatever it was. And I said, what made you want to get a membership? And he's like, dude, I saw you at like 5-something in the morning, 20 degrees outside, it's raining, and you're running. And you had every reason not to be out there, and you were still out there. So whatever excuse I have not to go to the gym, it's not going to cut it. And he's like, so I'm in here every day after work, and I'm going to be in here until I reach my goal of, I think he wanted to lose like 10 pounds or something like that and get some more muscle mass. But I was going, okay, that's cool. And I see him every now and then. He's still going. And you never know who you're going to inspire, excuse me. But
I love that. I love that. Yeah. That you had every reason not to be out there, and yet there you were.
There I was. Yeah.
I think that is a good philosophy. Don't let those reasons get in your way.
I tell people all the time, you can have the best intentions in the world when you're sitting on your couch drinking a nice cold beverage, but when it's time to get up after it and it's cold outside, it's dark, you'll sit and look at your shoes for 30 minutes before you decide, like, do I really want to do this or not? And the discipline is, no matter what's going on, you put the shoes on and you get after it.
Caleb, looking at your shoes before you have to get out of bed to look at your shoes. I mean, there's a lot of us who are in that nice warm bed thinking about how cold it is outside. We don't even get to our shoes.
And you know what? That's the thing. People often ask me, like, what are steps to, like, getting into discipline? And I'll tell you, dude, like, I tell people I hate running. But I know it's good for me. I love the discipline behind it. I hate getting up early in the morning. So what better way to get discipline at it than getting up before everybody else does? And then when you're up, you have that time to yourself to work out, read a book, catch up on social media, whatever you want to do. You have that time in the morning to do it. and you also have extra time in the day to get other things done that you normally wouldn't, and that's the way I look at it. I'm working out. I have the rest of the morning to do whatever I want to do, hike, cut grass, whatever. But I got my workout in that morning before everybody else. And that's my time to really reflect and think on things, is when I'm working out, listening to the John Frickin' Muir podcast.
Or Hiker Trash Radio.
Or Hiker Trash Radio. I kind of like that. I don't know, man. Like I saw you kind of rebranded. I'm like, oh man, I kind of like the John Frickin' Muir podcast now, but the Hiker Trash one's good too. It's going to grow on me. I think it will.
All right. So Training for Life, Caleb Young, thank you so much. We are finished. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Caleb. We wish you the very best in your future adventures. Want to hear about that marathon, and hope you come back and tell us about it. As we close up today, go ahead there, Caleb.
Doc, thank you so much for having me on, man. This was awesome, and I love the podcast. And I promise you, I'm a full-time listener. Like you're one of the podcasts I listen to on a regular basis. You really are.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. As we close up today, any shout outs to friends and family, Caleb?
Man, I just want to give, I've had some supportive people over the years, on social media and just in, general life, but my family, my wife, obviously shout out to, Randall Gillespie over at Grunt Proof. He's a great guy. He's giving me some props on his channel for, trying to get me some subscribers over there. Eric Coleman, just a great dude, man. Always enjoy talking to him. And he's one of those people, man. I don't understand why that dude does not have 1 million subscribers on YouTube. His content is just that good. Like, it baffles me. I don't understand the algorithm of YouTube, but go over, listen to me. Go over to Coleman Outdoors and give him a subscribe right now. Just not right now, after the podcast, but go over there and check him out.
Fantastic. All right. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you've got a broken arm and you've got to build your shelter with one hand. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.